Good morning. This is the International Arbitrage in Barbados on the west coast of Old Town. And today on the International Arbitrage, we're continuing to explain international arbitrage, the economic value that can be unlocked by doing international business. And the main requirement of international business is communication. If you are able to communicate, if you are good at group dynamics, if you are able to appreciate cultural differences and see difference as a source of potential source of economic value, then international business could potentially be for you. And I've used the examples in other videos that the largest corporations on earth have one distinguishing factor, is that they are multinational. Those corporations and countries which are have better systems, better people, better corporate cultures towards doing international business are the largest and most powerful businesses on earth. And that's a fact. And so it's no different for family-owned businesses, owner-managed businesses. If you've been a geologist in oil and gas engineering for 30 years and you really want to think about trying to do your own field, you know that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of fields all over the world where they have been abandoned or deemed uneconomical by large oil firms, not because there's no profit to be made from running these fields, but large companies with massive overheads and cost structures cannot operate small play fields economically. But a family or a team of 30 or 40 oil and gas engineers and personnel can become exceptionally wealthy and generate hundreds of millions of dollars in profits from small fields, because the emphasis there is on communication, teams forming, building communication, enabling people to work together across borders and time zones, and building and forming those relationships. Now, quite often, owner managers, family-owned businesses are busy running their companies. They're busy operating their companies, making money, looking after their families. Building international relationships is not on the cards for everyone. But for some of you who are looking for additional economic growth, then that is what you have an opportunity to do. You can build relationships instead of when you go on holidays, but definitely break out of the resort or go where you need to go and, look for people in your space and build relationships. Build them over time. Take your time in building these relationships. There's no rush. At the end of the day, the risk that professionals go on about, and in the previous video I explained that, especially in the US, there's this underlying narrative that international business involves a lot of risk and a lot of high potential for fraud. Well, that's only if you don't do things properly. At the end of the day, every system has its requirements. And so if you're doing international business, if you rush in and try to unlock a profitable opportunity in 6 months without building any relationships or really understanding the place and the people that you're going to be work with, and you can't communicate with them, then yes, you will have basically problems, challenges. Those risks will probably be realized. But if you put in the work, build relationships, spend the necessary amount of time, you will essentially open up. Then once you do start the opportunity, you will open up and start and unlock economic value. And I can't emphasize this enough. It is about the relationships, the communication, and the people. And so you have to have that in place before you undertake international business in any jurisdiction, any country, between any two countries. Now, US persons in particular have a fantastic access to the US market, the US capital markets, and recently the US private capital markets. But the US private capital markets or private markets have a distinguishing feature in that a lot of people in the private markets, not at the institutional level, but at the high net worth individual level, and their advisors view international as high risk, high potential for fraud. The banks are telling them that it's high compliance risk and so on and so forth. Well, that's just nonsense. First and foremost, there are a lot of US owner managers, owner operators who are doing things internationally. They have great communication skills. They've built up great communication networks and they know what they're doing. But a lot of you don't have, you haven't built those platforms overseas, and so you look upon international opportunities as high risk and high potential for fraud. But that is actually not the case. The perception is actually wrong, because unless you put in the work to build the relationships, to do the analysis, to do what is required, it's not really possible for you to say these things. And a lot of the advisors themselves anyway have never worked overseas. They don't have offices overseas. Show me a medium-sized US law firm that has an international office anywhere in the Caribbean. There are none, probably, next to none. There are people in the Caribbean who've been called to the bar in the US for sure, but there are no there is one US accounting organization that deals with private clients. I'm not talking about the big four that deal with multinationals, because they're to do with multinationals. But the ones that deal with the big four, with private clients, is Anderson's. Anderson's, a few years ago, they established offices throughout the Caribbean. Now, they're very smart. They're very smart. They're going to reap the rewards of that in days, months, and years to come. So, those of you who are considering, and I was talking about US persons and the fact that as US persons, you have the ability to raise money in the US. You have the ability to use US banking systems. Many US banking systems require a social security number to be able to get things like merchant accounts and other fintech services and things that are in the US. The US, of course, is a highly desirable place to do banking, private banking, to base both long-term investments and short-term working capital because of the US jurisdiction, the laws that are in the US, and so on and so forth. So, it really is important that people realize the nature of international business, and you can take all of those things that you have access to in the US, apply it to international opportunities. Now, this is, of course, on a foundation of relationships, not in the absence of relationships. You can't form an international business with a PowerPoint investment deck, an offer memorandum, and some phone calls and Zoom calls and what have you. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not international business. International business is you've put in the work, you have met the people, you've put your story out there, you've built relationships over time, you yourself have been on the ground. And to my African American diaspora, to the Barbadian diaspora in the US, you guys in particular, and the diaspora in the UK, those of us in big countries, I'm going to address this in a separate video, but those of us with connections to Barbados and the Caribbean, US persons are paying like $450, $500,000 or whatever it is for passports and citizenship in Nevis. Like a lot of us in the diaspora, we have second passports, or you have the ability to become a citizen and have second passports. Wealthy people are buying passports in Nevis, Grenada, St. Lucia, and other countries. Why is that? Why are these people doing this? So I would say to us in the diaspora, I know why we left. Our parents left because they were looking for opportunity. We live in islands and what have you, and islands are physically small and we're physically constrained, and with our history of colonialism and all the things that we know and the problems that we know we have in small countries or whatever. But as is always the case, there is always room for optimism, and there's always a room to focus on solving problems. And we have the internet now. And as a US citizen, you have access to the US banking system. You have access to raise funds in the US. You have a network in the US, and you may be a citizen of a country in the Caribbean like Barbados, right? And so therefore you can exploit or utilize the platform of both countries, bring them together, and unlock fantastic business opportunities. Now, I say again, this is not for everyone. It is for those of you who are interested. And I found that many people that are interested are enthusiastic. They forge out there. They don't know what they're doing. They're finding their way. And I thought, I've met people that have moved all over the world and doing different things. Of course, there have always been people like this. But what I sometimes get amazed at is the negativity of some US advisors who say, oh no, don't do international, it's too complex. Let everything just flow through back to paying all your taxes here in the US, and it's too complex, you can't do this and you can't do that. And these are people that have never lived or worked outside of the US. You know the US tax compliance system and you know US tax law, but doesn't qualify you to disqualify international opportunity. There's always a way. And the US international tax system has been built for international business. And I'm willing to have that discussion, cordial discussion, with any of my US colleagues, because I've studied now the US international tax system closely for over 5 years. I'm almost tired of studying it as I try to finish my PhD. So, let's keep an open mind, guys. And as I said, it's not a panacea. You have to put in the work. There are no shortcuts to doing international business. But for those of us who love it and are interested in doing international business, let's go. Let's look into it. All right, guys. Cheers for now. All right.